Hello, Julie here and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be making 3 cards and I'm going to use vellum in a couple of different ways to create these 3 cards. I'm going to use white card bases to make all 3 of the cards. For this first card I've cut a piece of pink cardstock that is marginally smaller than the actual card, so the card is 5 inches I think square, and I've cut the pink card to 4 7/8 square. So to start with, I'm just going to use some white vellum or clear vellum, and I'm going to use this Heartfelt Creations stamp called Daisy Patch Flowers, and I'm going to stamp and heat emboss those flowers onto my vellum, and I'm going to heat emboss them with white, brilliant white superfine embossing powder. I use my embossing buddy, the powder puff thing, to make sure that the embossing powder only goes where I want it to go, although because I'm going to cut these out it doesn't really matter if the embossing powder gets in other areas of the vellum, but I do use it. I give it a good coat and then go ahead and stamp my flower. There are 5 flowers in this set, 5 different sizes of the one same flower, should I say. So I stamp and emboss the whole 5 sizes. I then use my scissors to manually cut out each of the flowers, fussy cut them. I don't like a border around my stamped images, so I prefer to cut them out. I do have a scan and cut that lets me cut the flowers out without a border, and I do use those quite often, but I decided to cut these out by hand because there are only 5 simple flowers. I ended up using my Heartfelt Creations Delicate Aster stamp to make some of the leaves to go with this. I used exactly the same technique, heat embossed on the clear vellum. I've got some really fine, I think it's a pale pink lace, I'm not sure whether it's actually pale pink or white, and I'm going to put this across the front of my pink card panel and attach it using some double-sided tape. I'm not going to put it actually in the middle, I'm going to put it a little bit higher so that will give me room for my flower and for my greeting. I decided to make 2 flowers out of my 5 layers, so just using my Aleene's original tacky glue, I apply glue in the centre of each layer and then put one layer on top of the other so that the petals are staggered. I do 3 layers for the larger flower and 2 layers for the smaller flower. I have a couple of different sized clear gems here, and I'm going to put one in the centre of each of my flowers. I'm going to start to assemble the front panel of my card now. First I'm going to attach my lace using tape, and then I'm going to attach my flowers and leaves using glue. Once they're all in place, I use double-sided tape and on the back of the pink panel to attach that to my card base. Now it's time to make my greeting. I'm going to have hello on the front of this card, and I'm going to use the same technique that I used with my flowers. I am going to heat emboss the vellum, and then I'm going to cut the greeting out using my Craft DD509 nesting rectangles. Once that is all ready to go, I use some liquid glue behind the actual text so that you can't see it through the vellum, and attach that to the front bottom right hand corner of my card. I had thought that that would be the end of this card, but it was still looking a bit too bare for me, so I used my white Signo gel pen to put some faux stitching around the edge of the pink card panel and also around the vellum greeting panel. So for our second card today, once again I'm using the white or clear vellum and a white card base. I'm not actually using any coloured cardstock on this card. I'm using a stamp of a very large flower. This flower basically takes up the whole front of the card. I don't know what brand it is, I haven't kept the brand. And I'm going to do the flower and some leaves to suit, and I'm going to use my Versamark ink to actually stamp the image. Then I'm going to heat emboss it using Aussie Stamps and Crafts embossing powder in gold. I've had this embossing powder for probably 15 years, and as you can see it's still plenty in the jar, and I don't use it all that often, but it's a nice gold and I do use it when I want a gold embossing. Once the stamping and the embossing powder has been applied, once again I use my heat tool to heat the embossing powder up and make it nice and shiny. Keep your heat gun moving when you're using vellum, and occasionally go to the back of your vellum as well. It stops your vellum from warping. I have gone ahead and cut my flower and leaves out. Now I'm going to colour this flower and leaves using alcohol markers. So I'm going to get a piece of white paper so I can see what I'm actually doing, and then I'm going to turn my vellum over so I'm actually colouring on the back of the image, and I'm going to use my an assortment of alcohol markers to colour the leaves and the flower. I'm using 2 shades of each thing. So for the leaves I'm using I can't see the names, Nile green and vivid green. So I'm putting the darker green in the centre of the leaves and the lighter green to the outside of the leaf. I use the same procedure to colour my flower. I cover the whole flower with pale pink, then I use pastel pink to come out from the centre of each petal a bit, like about 3/4 of the way out, and then I use pastel violet to just give a darker colour in closer to the inner edge of each petal. Because we're actually colouring on the back of the vellum, when we turn the vellum over to the right side, you'll find that your colours are more muted not as bright as they appear when you're painting them on. I used a lemon yellow for the centre of my flower. It's time now to start thinking about assembling my card. I've cut another piece of vellum that's got a self pattern in it, so this is vellum as well, and I'm using my Encore gold ink pad to ink around the edges of the vellum. If you are not careful, you'll smudge that and get gold ink all over your card base, so I tend to wipe mine with a tissue, let it dry for a while, and then wipe it with a tissue to take off any excess so that I don't end up making a big mess. I'm going to use this 3M product called well, I think it's called Velum tape, and this is a tape that you can use on the back of vellum or with vellum, and it doesn't show through the vellum, and you have to be sure though to rub it very hard. You have to burnish it on well, so that helps the vellum tape to disappear. You can't see it. The better you burnish it, the less chance you've got of actually seeing the tape. I use that tape to attach my flower and my leaves to the piece of vellum that I've cut to be the front panel of my card. Once I've got my flower and leaves attached to my panel, I then use glue behind my flower to attach that panel to the front of my card base. By applying the glue to the back of the flower, you won't be able to see it through the layers of vellum. I trimmed the overhang from the card front using my scissors, and then I used my gold gel pen to once again put a faux stitched border around the vellum layer at the front of the card. For my greeting, I used the same stamp collection, and one of the sayings on there, or greetings on there, said congratulations, so I stamped that using my Versamark ink onto a piece of pink offcut card from the previous card, and I heat embossed that with my gold embossing powder. I then trimmed that piece of pink down to 5/8 of an inch by 2 3/8 of an inch, and then with a piece of gold cardstock I cut another piece that was 3/4 of an inch by 2 7/8 of an inch and matted that congratulations greeting onto the gold. The greeting was then attached to the card front using foam tape. So that's another way of using your vellum. Just use your alcohol markers to paint behind your picture. Our third card for today is very striking, but it is by far the easiest card that I've made today. I'm using this brightly coloured vellum. It's a rainbow vellum, and I am simply cutting that vellum to the same size as the front of my card panel, which is 130 millimeters. And I think that's 5 1/8 inches by 5 1/8 inches, and I'm using the darker end, like the red, purple and blue end of the rainbow. I have used some gold mirror card, to cut this sunflower in a frame die, and I'm going to attach that to the front of the card. I'm going to stick that to the front of the card using liquid glue. I've decided to keep all the pieces that I'm pushing out here because I'm going to use them as infill on another card that I'm going to make. I'm not going to make that card in this series, but in a future series I'm going to cut the die out of a different colour, probably white or pink or something like that, and then use these gold pieces to infill the pattern. I'm going to use my Aleene's Original Tacky Glue to attach my die cut to the front or to my piece of vellum. I'm going to apply glue to the back side of the vellum and behind the die cut so that you can't see the glue from the front, and that's how I'm going to attach that to the front of my card. My greeting on this card is going to say congratulations. I've used a die and cut that twice from white cardstock. I've then layered the two pieces on top of each other so that the greeting will have a bit more substance, and then I'm using the same liquid glue to attach that greeting to the top section of my card. As I said, this card is very simple, and that completes this particular card. Yeah, I hope you've enjoyed watching my 3 cards come together today. Vellum is something that I think is underutilised, and I'm going to try to endeavour to use it more in the future. I have got so much vellum, and that I need to use up because I'd like to start reducing my stash some. So once again, thank you for spending your time here with me today. If you're not already a subscriber, I'd love it if you'd subscribe. Thank you.